Hello and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Johan and I'm a Dutchie, and I want to learn about life and living in Australia, and the only way I can do this, because it's way down there and I'm afraid of flying, is looking at YouTube videos about life and living in Australia. And for today we're gonna take a look at the broken Aussie town police are too scared to touch. And this is a follow-up of what I did yesterday about Alice Springs. And I was wondering what and how is this coming to? And in this video, there should be some explaining how it's, what is going on in Alice Springs, about life and living in Alice Springs, and why is it the most dangerous city in Australia. So that's the plan for today. Learn more about Australia, and if you want to join me in learning life and living in Australia, then maybe you should hit the subscribe button. So let's take a look about Alice Springs again.
Alice Springs, a small town of about 26,000 people, has become the symbol of a crisis Australia doesn't want to deal with. Youth crime, violent assaults, alcohol chaos, break-ins, armed brawls, and a justice system that barely functions. At night, it's not uncommon to see teenagers roaming the streets in groups, throwing rocks, smashing windows, torching cars. Shops are locked up with steel shutters, locals don't go outside after sunset, and the police, even they hesitate in certain areas.
And that's what we saw yesterday in the video, that this all the shops are closed, nobody's outside, only the one who actually dared to go outside. So
the craziest part is that the entire situation has gotten so out of control that everyone can see it, but no one wants to touch it, especially not the government. So, how did Alice Springs become Australia's unofficial crime capital?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering yesterday. How could it come this far that this city is called the crime capital?
Why is it spiraling, and what's being done about it? Let's take a walk through the Red Centre and break down the real story behind Alice Springs. Alice Springs sits dead in the centre of Australia, literally. Drop your finger in the middle of the map and you'll land on it. A town surrounded in every direction by thousands of kilometres of red dust, dry riverbeds, and nothingness. It's remote in a way most people can't even picture. The kind of place where if you break down, you're not waiting for a tow truck, you're waiting for a miracle. The town began in the 1870s as a critical stop on the Overland Telegraph Line, a massive engineering project that connected Adelaide in the south to Darwin in the north, and eventually the rest of the world. Back then, it wasn't even called Alice, it was known as Stuart, named after the explorer John McDouall Stuart, who helped map the interior. The nearby waterhole, which was essential for early telegraph crews, was named Alice Spring after Alice Todd, the wife of Sir Charles Todd. Charles Todd was the superintendent of telegraphs and the brains behind the Overland Telegraph. It was one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects of its time, cutting a path through thousands of kilometers of desert to bring Australia into the global communications network. And like a lot of places in colonial Australia, it was named after a woman who never actually saw it. Alice Todd lived in Adelaide, and she never stepped foot in the outback town that would eventually carry her name. Despite its isolation, Alice Springs started to grow. It became a supply depot during World War II. After the war, it turned into a quirky frontier town, half military, half tourism, and somehow thriving in the middle of nowhere. By the late 20th century, it had evolved into a proper regional centre with shops, schools, pubs, and a surprising amount of foot traffic for a place so far off the grid. And
sounds good.
Just outside of town, tucked away from view, sits Pine Gap, one of the most secretive and strategically important US military facilities in the world.
US facilities. Did he actually say US?
secretive and strategically important US military facilities in the world. Officially, it's a joint defense base run by the US and Australia. Unofficially, it's the beating heart of satellite surveillance across the globe. It's been active since the Cold War, and it still plays a role in drone operations and global intelligence. Most locals can't get anywhere near it, but its presence has always loomed large, the strange counterbalance to the poverty, dysfunction, and lawlessness just kilometers away. On one side of town, one of the most advanced intelligence hubs on Earth. On the other, broken homes, boarded windows, and kids aimlessly walking the streets.
Disarm the war machine, land back. Stop the genocide. Free Palestine and close the Pine Gap.
But here's the thing. For all its growth, Alice Springs never really grew together. The town developed, but not in a way that met the needs of everyone, especially not the Aboriginals who'd lived there for tens of thousands of years before the telegraph lines, roads, or fences ever arrived. That imbalance between the modern town and the traditional custodians of the land is at the core of everything that followed. Alice Springs has one of the highest Indigenous populations of any towns in Australia. This is the living heart of Central Australia's Aboriginal culture. You see it in the people, the language, the art, the stories, but you also see the gap between the history and the reality. You can't talk about that gap without mentioning the stolen generation, a government policy that, for decades, saw Aboriginal children forcibly removed from their families and placed in white institutions, missions, or foster care.
What? Force their children to live somewhere else?
The goal was assimilation, and these policies lasted well into the 20th century, and many of the families affected lived in or around Alice Springs. Generations were torn apart, language and culture suppressed, and the trauma didn't end when the removal stopped.
Okay. Yeah. The idea sounds good, but the teacher in me better said, the pedagogue in me says, this won't work at all.
It passed down, quietly, painfully, shaping the identity and future of kids growing up in Alice today. Grandparents who were taken, parents who were displaced, children still living in the aftermath of policies that tried to erase who they were. All across the fringes of Alice are the town camps, clusters of Aboriginal housing areas that were never designed to be permanent. Most started out as informal campsites, places where Indigenous families who weren't welcome in the town centre could settle.
Informal campsites.
Over time, the government fenced them off, added basic housing, and gave them official names. But even today, most camps still lack proper infrastructure. Roads are potholed, drainage is poor, some homes are damaged beyond repair, but still occupied. It's common to find entire extended families sharing a 2-bedroom space with no air conditioning and intermittent power. Security patrols and police drive through regularly to keep order. Most homes have metal screens over the windows, and some are boarded up entirely. And in the middle of it all, kids, growing up in conditions that are overcrowded, overstressed, and deeply disconnected from both traditional cultural grounding and mainstream society. And that's the crux of it. These communities are being systematically set up to struggle. The impact of colonization didn't stop with European settlement. The trauma of the stolen generation, years of underfunded services, neglected health, poor schooling, housing shortages, it all adds up, and it doesn't disappear. It passes on from one generation to the next. This dysfunction is unfortunately what many of the Aboriginal people growing up in Alice are caught in. Too removed from their culture to feel rooted in it, too alienated from modern institutions to feel included in them. So they drift. And that drifting, that cultural dislocation, is a major reason why things start to break down. Because when you have nowhere to belong, nowhere to feel safe, and no real future in sight, you start creating your own rules.
Yep. If there's no thing you need to defend, or if you have no backup, you cannot fall back to any kind of education or any kind of safe feeling in your home, or then yeah, people get desperate, and desperate people do desperate things.
Now, let's be real. Yes, historical trauma matters. Yes, we need to understand how colonization and forced removals shaped what we see today.
Yeah, look at the United States.
Policies like the stolen generation left scars that haven't healed. Many of the grandparents and parents of today's kids in Alice grew up with that trauma. It didn't vanish when the policies ended. It passed down, affecting identity, stability, and trust in institutions. But understanding history isn't the same as excusing chaos, because in recent years, Alice Springs has experienced a crime wave so intense it's impossible to ignore. This isn't media spin, nor is it fear-mongering. This is a lived reality for the people who live and work there. Assaults, property damage, home invasions, car thefts, public brawls, all happening with disturbing regularity. And while
Yeah, we saw the numbers yesterday.
crime stats are debated, even the government admits things have escalated rapidly. Some suburbs have seen crime jump by over 100%. But you don't need to look at spreadsheets to get it, you just need to walk around. This isn't organized crime, it's not bikies or drug cartels. What's happening in Alice is more chaotic, and in some ways more dangerous. It's groups of unsupervised, disconnected kids, most of them indigenous, shaped by years of trauma, neglect, and broken institutions, who have learned there are no real consequences. Most of these kids are out on the streets after dark. Some are from town camps, others from distant communities where schools are under-resourced, jobs are scarce, and boredom is a fact of life. Alice offers lights, shops, people, but no real structure or support, so they drift, alone or in packs, and when there's no guidance, no purpose, and no accountability, things unravel quickly. Cars
Yep. I can't imagine this. It's not that well.
get stolen and torched for kicks, businesses are vandalized, people get assaulted walking home or waiting at bus stops. For many residents, it's become a new normal, one built on tension and unpredictability. Locals have adapted. Most won't walk outside after sunset. Suburbs that once
Not after sunset.
felt quiet now lock down early. Bottle shops and supermarkets hire private security. Fast food joints install metal shutters, and some businesses have turned their storefronts into mini fortresses. Reinforced glass, steel doors, floodlights, like they're preparing for a siege. And the system? Well, it's completely overwhelmed because it isn't built to deal with them. The youth justice laws in the Northern Territory are intentionally soft, designed with rehabilitation in mind, not punishment. And that sounds great, in theory, but in practice, it's a disaster. Police are under-resourced, courts are overloaded, and detention centers are full. So, when a 13-year-old racks up 25 offenses, the result is often a warning, maybe a night in holding, and then back on the street.
Okay. Yeah, there are no real consequences. And the kid won't forget it, and he will talk about it to other friends of him, and they will do the same. So,
And they know it. Word gets around. These kids know the limits. They know what they can get away with and how little consequence there'll be. And once that line disappears, it's game on. At the heart of this crisis is alcohol, or more accurately, the chaos around how it's controlled. In many Aboriginal communities across the Northern Territory, alcohol is flat out banned. They're hard-coded into federal law, first rolled out during the 2007 intervention
simply banned. No alcohol at all.
and later rebranded under legislation like Stronger Futures. The original idea was to reduce domestic violence and social harm in vulnerable communities. But nearly 2 decades later, it's become something else entirely, a pressure valve that's redirected the problem instead of solving it. Because here's what happens. People from dry communities drive into Alice Springs to drink. Simple. That's the closest place where alcohol is legal. But the town, already small and under-resourced, isn't built to absorb that kind of social pressure.
Oh, they are from outside Alice Springs where there's no alcohol allowed. Then they come over to Alice Springs to get a drink. And then you saw, like I saw yesterday, then the police is there to verify their IDs if they are actually permitted to have alcohol or not. That's the thought and the law.
Especially not nightly. So Alice Springs responded by locking things down.
Enjoy your stay. Please respect our ways. We will, but alcohol restrictions apply in public areas. Drinking alcohol in public areas and public restricted areas without a permit is a serious offense. Penalties: alcohol tipped out or confiscated, $100 on the spot fines, and up to $500 if the matter goes to court. Court might order a person not to drink. Liquor Act warning. $100.
Hard. Today, it has some of the strictest alcohol laws anywhere in Australia and probably even the world. Actual police officers are stationed outside every bottle shop. There's ID scanners at the doors. Every purchase is logged. Your address gets checked on an iPad to see if you're flagged as being from a restricted area. If you live in a town camp, even if you've never been in trouble, never had a drink in public, never been violent, you can be automatically banned from buying booze. And it doesn't stop there. Some pubs have rules that limit Aboriginal patrons to a fixed number of drinks per night, 4, maybe 6, while everyone else drinks freely. Staff monitor how much
Only the Aboriginals. That doesn't sound good.
you've had and track your table. In some venues, it's a soft cutoff. In others, it's enforced like a curfew. The whole thing feels arbitrary and to many,
No phone.
blatantly discriminatory. But here's the thing, none of this has worked, not in the long term. People still drink because people will always find a way to drink. The only difference is where it happens now. Instead of safe, regulated environments, drinking gets pushed into the streets, the parks, the riverbeds. It's public, it's chaotic, and it's a disaster waiting to happen. And when the pubs close, usually around 2 a.m, all that tension gets dumped out onto the footpaths. That's when the trouble starts. Drunken
Yeah. People are drunk, easily agitated, and then the bomb explodes.
arguments boil over, fights break out, property gets vandalized. Police scramble to respond, but they're often overwhelmed. Local residents know the drill. As soon as the bars start clearing out, you get indoors, lock your gates, stay off the streets. It's a system that punishes the symptom while ignoring the disease. People aren't drinking because they're lawless, they're drinking because they're bored, stressed, cut off, or dealing with trauma that hasn't been addressed in any meaningful way. And yet, the official response remains the same: restrict, monitor, ban.
Restrict, monitor, and ban. Educate.
Result is more pressure, more resentment, more chaos, and a town that, every night, becomes a pressure cooker with a broken lid. And yet, despite the rise in crime, the government's response has been, to put it bluntly, light, patchy, and painfully slow. Sure, there's been fly-in visits from politicians, committees formed, reviews launched, and speeches made, but if you ask almost anyone living in Alice Springs, the answer's always the same. Nothing real is changing, not on the ground, not where it matters. And here's the uncomfortable truth that no one wants to say aloud. A lot of Australians are losing patience. Not with Aboriginal people, not with kids in crisis, but with a system that seems to reward dysfunction, excuse bad behaviour, and offer no accountability to anyone. Australians are stuck in an impossible middle, especially those living in Alice Springs.
But Australians, meaning every Australian, also the Aboriginals, because those are Australians too. So the Australians, I assume it's everybody, white or dark, if I may say so.
On one hand, they're told to be compassionate, to understand the trauma, the history, and the cultural pain behind the dysfunction. And they do. Most people get that. They They're not heartless. They know this didn't come out of nowhere. But on the other hand, they're living in a community that's unraveling. People are scared. Workers are getting attacked, pensioners are getting robbed, small business owners are closing shops not because they failed, but because they're exhausted from being broken into every other week. This isn't an abstract societal problem, this is an everyday reality, and it's brutal. And no one in power seems willing to admit that both things can be true. Compassion doesn't mean accepting chaos. You can care deeply about historical injustice and still want the kid who smashed your window or threatened your partner to face consequences. You can support Indigenous people and still feel furious that your neighborhood needs private security just to keep a fast food joint open past 7 p.m. You can acknowledge colonization and the stolen generation and still be furious that your teenage daughter doesn't feel safe walking home from the bus stop. You can hold both truths, but our politics don't allow room for that. It's either or. You're either compassionate or reactionary. You're either progressive or punitive. People have been patient. They've waited. They've hoped the government would show up and do something real, but instead, they've been abandoned. Because every level of government, local, territory, and federal, is too scared of the political blowback.
Yeah. They won't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
They're terrified that anything firm, anything decisive will be labeled racist or authoritarian. So they do what modern politicians do best: perform outrage, announce a task force, and disappear once the cameras are off. This is theatre disguised as governance. It's a pantomime of leadership. Press releases, photo ops, and jargon-filled strategy documents that don't change a single damn thing on the ground. And what do they actually do? They throw money at the problem. Millions in things like emergency funds, pop-up youth hubs, pilot programs that last 6 months and vanish, all of it designed to look like action without taking any real risk. Because risk means responsibility, and responsibility is political poison. So instead of nuance, we get nothing. Leaders too afraid of backlash to act, institutions too hollow to intervene, and locals left to clean up the mess with no real support. You've got kids running around with no structure, no purpose, and no consequence. You've got exhausted police, overwhelmed courts, and detention centers bursting at the seams. You've got locals locking themselves in at night, and you've got bureaucrats in Darwin and Canberra fiddling with guidelines and saying community-led responses are being explored. We're past the point of exploring. The house is on fire, and the government's still writing a feasibility study. There's no bold thinking, no long-term vision, and no one willing to say, this is the plan and we're committing to it for the next 10 years.
Yeah, of that I can't comment because I have no clue what's all been done and how it's been done. So it's only getting into my learning curve as in, okay.
No matter the politics. Because here's the reality. The kids causing the chaos, they've been failed twice. First by history, and now by a government too cowardly to step up. It's not about race, it's not about ideology, it's about a basic question of whether the people in charge are capable of governing at all. People are ultimately tired of being gaslit, told that things are improving when anyone who's walked the streets of Alice at night knows that they're not. And they're tired of being painted as racist or reactionary for wanting the most basic thing a government should provide: safety.
But then they are called racist. So if they want to deal with the problem, and the problem is the Aboriginals, and they want to help those Aboriginals to get some more structure and, I don't know, possibilities, a future, education, well, then it's racist. It's being a racist, then you want to help the Indigenous people. But you help everybody, not only the Indigenous people. And if you do it in the right way, then it's not racist. It's if you exclude them from all other things, then you can say you are a racist because they can do that, and the Aboriginals, Indigenous people, cannot do this. Then it's racism. But if they get better future opportunities, I don't know what, because I'm just shouting out blanks here. But that's my experience as a teacher. If you learn the people, then there will be a future. But all depends on, is there a good school? Is there possibilities for work? Because that's also, if people cannot go to work, why should you do your studies if you can apply the things that you have learned in school? So, yeah, but it's not. Why is it racist to help these people?
Now, this is where compassion fatigue starts to set in. People are getting tired of caring and getting nothing back. Tired of being told it's all too complicated to fix, while the situation on the ground keeps getting worse. So, if the government thinks that doing nothing is the safer political option, they're wrong. Because the longer this continues, the harder it'll be to rebuild trust on any side. The people of Alice Springs, and frankly Australians across the country, aren't asking for miracle solutions. They're asking for honesty, for courage, for leadership that isn't terrified of the optics. They're asking for policies that actually work, policies that actually make communities safer and stronger. The truth is, Alice Springs isn't an isolated case. It's a magnifying glass, zooming in on Australia's biggest unresolved issues: colonial fallout, systemic inequality, and a country still struggling with how to live alongside Aboriginal people. The violence, the crime,
It's okay. It's the main part in Alice Springs, but all over Australia, there are still frictions between the Aboriginals, the original people, and the ones who came over from Great Britain and the rest of the world. Yeah, I'm new, still learning, so I know what I have to do.
dysfunction, none of it exists in a vacuum. It's what happens when entire communities are left without services, without opportunity, and without hope. When governments over-legislate but under-deliver, when media swings between moral panic and complete disinterest, Alice pays the price. It's a place where the cracks in the national story are too big to cover up, where the impact of 200 years of policy failure isn't academic, it's
200 years of policy failure. Whoa.
unfolding night after night in real time. Despite everything though, Alice Springs isn't broken beyond repair. In fact, some of the most inspiring work is already being done by the community itself. There are local programs run by Aboriginal leaders that work with youth through sport, art, and cultural connection. Some boxing gyms and mentoring groups have been incredibly effective in steering young people away from violence. Health workers and social workers on the ground are doing what they can with extremely limited resources. The issue is scale. These community-led solutions exist, but without sustained funding and long-term political backing, they're band-aids on bullet wounds. Real change would mean things like expanding housing in town camps and rebuilding trust between communities and police. There's no
Yeah. If they're throwing money at it, then you would say building some decent housing with with decent infrastructure and sanitation and everything on it, so these people have a decent home that they can live and work, but where they can live in, with wide streets and street lighting and feeling safe, etc. But if they are living in camps like this, yeah.
quick fix. It won't fit into a 3-minute news segment, but it's the only way out. And to be fair, there has been some movement lately. As of July 2025, the Northern Territory government has flagged changes to the youth justice laws, aiming to make it easier to deny bail to repeat offenders and close some of the loopholes that have allowed chronic youth crime to spiral.
Yeah, but if the prison system is overloaded, then they will send out the youth into the street, even if this law has changed.
How effective that'll be? Too early to tell. Legislation might be shifting, but on the streets, the cycle's still spinning. So there you have it. Alice Springs, Australia's most dangerous city. Not just statistically, but also dangerous because it exposes how badly Australia is failing its most vulnerable communities. It's dangerous because it shows what happens when government policy doesn't match lived reality. It's a real place with real people caught in absolute chaos, and ignoring it won't make it go away. But what do you think? Should Australia be introducing tougher laws for youth offenders, or would that only make the problem worse? Do you think the government...
I cannot comment on this because I do not exactly know what the laws are at this moment, but so tougher laws, maybe not. That's not an answer, not a question I can answer.
Government is avoiding Alice Springs because it's politically sensitive, or do they simply not care? Would pumping in more money solve anything, or does this come down to rebuilding trust and community from the ground up? And most importantly, can Alice Springs turn things around, or has it already reached a breaking point?
Yeah, those are all good questions that I cannot answer because I do not know enough about it. Oh boy, but some of my subscribers will react, I'm sure.
If you found this video interesting, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more deep dives.
I already did. Oh boy. Well, interesting video. It explains a lot about what I saw yesterday in the video of Spaniard being in this region and what there happens. And it's not totally what I saw because everybody was fascinated by, hey, there's Spaniard and they want to be with him. And so I read the comments that he is very popular. Of course he is. But the story at the start of the video explaining what all was going on within Alice Springs was very fascinating, and I was really wondering, what did this trigger? How did this come to? And this video really explains a lot about how this came to the way it is. But still, I need to learn a lot of about life and living in Australia. So if you want to see more of my videos about life and living in Australia, then maybe this is a good place to start with. And otherwise, we really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next Australian video.